Hi, I'm Dr. Greg Owens from the Reimagine Schools podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Bryon Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood, to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, BryonCarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected.
Hey PLN, September 27th, 2021. It is the beginning of the last week of September, and I can't believe we've gotten here this quickly. It seems like I just blinked when school started, but here we are. Here we are now. Things are settling down in school. Routines are happening. Students are learning. I'm learning. And it is the end of September already, and we have a number of things to do this week. We've got a new day of remembrance in Canada called Truth and Reconciliation Day, where we pause and we think about what's going on with our First Nations and Indigenous peoples in Canada and what has happened in the past. And so that's a new day of remembrance that has been put in our calendars. I don't know if it's a statutory holiday, I'm not sure, but as educators, we aren't working and some other places aren't working. So we're going to pause and be mindful of our relationship with our land and the people that were here before we got here as immigrants and settlers to this place. Okay, so this morning I listened to the full interview on the Innovator's Mindset podcast called Being Your Authentic Self, a conversation with Deontay Torres, who was a student that George had, the very first student George Koros had on his podcast. And Deontay, it was fantastic to hear your full story. It was fantastic to hear you talk about being actually you and not being somebody else, and how you want teachers to treat students as themselves and not make them into somebody that they're not. I've been guilty about probably doing that, but I need to relax on that and find out what students' strengths are and use the space that I have with them to grow them to be and understand who they are. So that's fantastic advice. I appreciate it. You need some inspiration, teachers and educators out there. Take a listen to Deontay Torres on Season 2, Episode 38 of the Innovator's Mindset Podcast. Thanks, George. Thanks, Deontay. Bye. One more thing for September 27th, 2021, following on the heels of that opening comment I made about the Innovator's Mindset Podcast, Season 2, Episode 38, with Deontay Torres and George Koros talking. Deontay, you know what? As a student, it's incredible to hear you talk about your experience, that you had a positive and rich experience in high school because of the teachers and administrators that were around you that believed in you. And so, that's an inspiring message. Some days it's hard to believe in our students as educators because we're tired. We got a lot of stuff going on in our own space. So as educators, I'm going to say that we need to believe in ourselves. We need to believe that we have a space that we can be close to students and children, and we can make a difference in their lives and grow them to be the young people that they are meant to be. And Deontay, I'm glad that you're finding your way. I'm glad that you're headed off to college, and you're in college right now probably as you're listening to this, and fantastic. So it's just so inspirational. So your advice to students was to be who you are, be yourself. So that's incredible. And the advice to education is that we need to expect change, and we need to be the change makers for the better of the next generation that is coming and going to be leaders in our world. So thanks so much, Deontay. Thanks, George. I had to get that in because, I wasn't done talking, and so impressed with you, Deontay. 17 years old. What was I doing? I was volunteering at the Calgary Olympics in 1988, and that was a pretty cool experience to step out and be part of something that was on the world stage. So young people, what are you doing to make a difference in your space? How are you engaging your world around you? And educators, how are we helping them do just that? Peace out. Bye-bye. One more thing for September 27, 2021. I just finished listening to episode 65 of the Ignite EdTech podcast with Craig Kemp out of Singapore. And Craig, thanks so much for another episode. Thank you for your thoughts on how you stay organized. That's one of those things in our world that our computer space, like our regular desktop space, can get neglected and get messy and make us inefficient. And I like your 5 tips about how you do that. If you need some tips and tricks on how to stay organized for yourself, take a look, listen to what Craig says on this podcast. One of the ways that I do help keep myself organized is I use the Chrome browser, Craig. And on the Chrome browser, my bookmark bar is showing, and I have bookmarks for different things. I have folders for bookmarks so that when I'm in the middle of a session, I'm learning and doing those things, that I bookmark a lot of things. The bookmarks pile up kind of like files do. And then you're like, what is this for? So, at a professional development, I will make a bookmark bar folder called Today in Professional Development, put the date on it or whatever. And then I drop all my bookmarks into that folder so they don't get, clutter up my useful toolbar in my bookmark bar. So another thing that I do is I take and I will edit the bookmark. And so in Chrome, if you right click on the bookmark, you can edit it and delete the words if there's a recognizable icon. So most of the things that I use have a recognizable icon, like the Outlook calendar, Outlook mail program, like Google Chrome, like all the Google tools, docs and sheets and things like that. And I take out the words on the bookmark bar to save myself real estate on my bookmark bar. And I counted the other day, and I think I can get probably 35 bookmarks across that toolbar that wouldn't be possible if I didn't delete those words. So that's my thoughts. That's that for today. And you also talked with Trav Golder. And thanks, Trav, for your message. Thanks for your words. And one more thing coming up. Hang on. One last thing for September 27, 2021. I'm talking a lot this morning. I was listening to episode 65 of the Ignite EdTech podcast with Craig Kemp, and he had guest on Trav Golder. And Trav, thanks so much for sharing your message and your story with us about you being a principal and being an educator and making a difference in people's lives and students' lives. And, I like how you talked about giving students choice and as opposed to chance, and how we need to present students with opportunities, and so that life doesn't show up by chance but by choice, and making that present and aware to students so that they have an opportunity to make a difference for themselves. Awesome to hear. Thanks so much for your encouragement, and great to hear you talk about OneNote. This Google guy here is being exposed more and more to the Microsoft products in my district, and I did use OneNote way back when I was in teacher training, but that was about 14 years ago, and it's much better now. It was good then. So OneNote, thanks so much. All right, that's all for today, people. Have a great day, and we will talk to you more tomorrow on Fresh Air at 5. This is episode 39 that we just started recording today. Okay, bye-bye. Hey PLN, it's September 28th, 2021, out here for Fresh Air at 5, and the freshness is starting to fall out of the sky as it's supposed to be a really, really wet day here, but I'm thankful right now that it's not. Revel in those moments, that you can get outside and enjoy the dry before the rain, and the rain's really important, but I'm not gonna lie, I'd rather not rather not walk in the rain. Okay, so this morning as I'm out walking, I came across a podcast yesterday as I was listening to the Ignite EdTech podcast with Craig Kemp, and he had on a guest, Trav Golter, who has a podcast of his own, and the podcast that he has is called Just a Teacher podcast. And I was curious, and I'm like, okay, I got to listen to Just a Teacher podcast. So this morning I found it, put it in my queue, and downloaded the episode so I could take it with me as I'm out here walking. And Trav, thank you so much for bringing us stories of just a teacher. You know, that word just is a funny word because we aren't just teachers, we are teachers. People, that word is an undermining word in my opinion, and takes away some of the impact and the perception, you know, that we're just a teacher. But sometimes we feel like just a teacher. So on to the episode. Episode 37, you had on guest Cathy Kinder, and she was talking about the family classroom environment that she has. And, you know, I'm going to say, Cathy, thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable and telling us that you were, you know, that little, you know, turd in your classroom growing up that, you know, caused a problem for teachers, and you were disruptive, and, you know, you needed to be loved, and you wanted to be loved, and you didn't want to be you know, that star student because your parents were in education. You wanted to have your own way and figure it out. So, you know, you talked about how you were disruptive, you were a pain in the butt, and then someone got a hold of you. Coming right back with one more thing. Hang on. One more thing for September 28th, 2021. I was just talking about episode 37 of the Just a Teacher podcast with Trav Golter and his guest, Cathy Kinder. And Cathy was a disruptor in her growing up space in a negative way. And it wasn't until a coach got a hold of her in her sophomore year, like she says, that got her attention and says, don't do that. Don't be like that. You're a better person than that. And so stop putting up this act of being cool and tough and all that stuff. That's the message that I heard, Cathy. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing your story and talking about how it's important that we be that rock star teacher. And, you know, you talked about incentivizing, and I think that would sell out teaching if we had signing bonuses and we had all that kind of stuff. It is kind of there, but it's in the space that I'm working in public education. I don't want that to happen, because if we have people that are getting paid more because they're rock star teachers, and then those that are not, you know, what's the incentive? Is it a paycheck, or is it because of passion? And, you know, I think I'm a good teacher. Am I a rock star teacher? I don't know. I'm on my way to maybe doing that, but I'm making a difference by sharing myself with my students, trying to be relevant, and talking about things that are challenging. I don't teach social studies or English or things like that, but I use education as a vehicle in my digital literacy space and in my math and science space to talk about life, because life is more important than the academics and even the digital literacy. And today, as we go to school, it's going to be Orange Shirt Day, which is a day of remembrance here in Canada about the residential school thing that happened with our Indigenous people and the oppression and the genocide that occurred back in my own country that we don't want to talk about. I'm going to come back to that in one more thing. Hang on. One more thing for September 28th, 2021. Just still continuing my reflection on episode 37 of Just a Teacher podcast with Trav Golter and guest Cathy Kinder. And so I was saying about Orange Shirt Day here, that we're going to be remembering this day. And it's about a young girl who had her orange shirt taken from her when she was taken from her family, the Indigenous family, and sent to a residential school. And they said, you can't have that because it's too shiny and pretty, and you have to be like everybody else. And took away her shirt. And that was, really hard for her and really sad. And it is a public symbol of the oppression that has occurred in this country that I call Canada, this country that I live in freely, this country that, cares about people and is kind. But there was a time when it wasn't kind. It wasn't kind to our Indigenous people. And this week is a week of we're having a new national day of remembrance called Truth and Reconciliation Day. And this is a new holiday. It's not a holiday. It's a day of remembrance where we remember the tragedy, the oppression, the unkindness that is within our own country. And so are we going to talk about this in our classes? It's easier if we don't. It's easier if we stick to the curriculum. But is it relevant? Absolutely. Yes, it's relevant because it's all around us and we need to remember. So this week I'm going to be talking about that with our other teachers. We're having a moment of remembrance. Going to do some activities where the students can reflect on what it means to be a student and be cared for, and that we make sure that we as an education system don't ever do that again. So that's my soapbox. I don't understand all of the backstory, but I understand enough of it that I need to bring it up. So teachers, bring up those things that are relevant and hard because it's happening to kids in our spaces and they see it, and we need to be those lights in those dark places. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Trav. Thank you so much all for listening. Have a fabulous Tuesday. Bye. September 28th, 2021. Yesterday in the mail, I received 2 books. I received the Aspire Leaders book by Josh Stamper, and I also received in the mail the Because of a Teacher with George Koros. And both of those books I've been looking forward to getting my hands on, and I need to carve out some time so I can read them. And George, thanks for writing your book about Because of a Teacher, about stories of teachers that have made a difference and had other people make an impact in their life. We need to tell those stories because of a teacher. And Josh, your Aspire Leaders book is a book about leadership, I believe, and I'm excited about digging into that as I grow in my understanding of leadership. Thanks both. Talk to you guys. Appreciate. Okay, bye-bye. Hey PLN, it's Wednesday, September 29, 2021. This morning, out for Fresh Air at 5. Halfway through the week, and it's been a long week already with lots of activity at the beginning of the week. And we are engaging our students in Orange Shirt Day week and Truth and Reconciliation week here in our BC schools and in our Canadian schools, because those are activities that talk about our relationship to the Indigenous people in our country and how there have been injustices and unfairness and oppression. So yes, it's a heavy week of conversation at school, and I talked to my students about it yesterday. We're dealing with it as a school and bringing light to the challenges that are going on around us and that have gone around us. So yes. All right. So this morning I listened to episode 95 of Got Tech, the podcast, as Eric and Nick bring us the rest of the 25 websites they were talking about on episode 94. And so in this episode, there are 12 websites that they bring to us that teachers should know about. And gentlemen, thank you so much. I have heard of 2 of these 12, and there's a lot of resources that are available. Mystery Dog, I like that. I have forgotten about it because I don't teach at the primary level, but it's a great resource to look at for video content and questions for kids. And then I like the video resource curation tools, that websites that you have as well for videos for kids. And you have a number of other ones about paraphrasing and text work that could be applicable at younger grades or even in secondary. So thanks, gents. Appreciate it so very much. One more thing for September 29th, 2021. Hey people, if you haven't heard of myedtechbundle.com, you should check out myedtechbundle.com, because these guys and Tyler Nemus, I think is his name, have put out a website where you can get trial bundles or packages of software. So, when you get that message that says, oh, you can try this for 7 days. Well, as a teacher, I don't have the capacity to dig into a tool for 7 days to try something. These guys have determined a way that they can bundle and provide longer trial periods for various softwares and give it to you not for free, but for a very reasonable price so that you can try it out. I signed up the other day and I picked up some. And so I really appreciate the effort that they're putting into my EdTech bundle. Check it out. Thanks, dudes. Appreciate it so very much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. One last thing for September 29th, 2021. I just listened to House of EdTech podcast, episode 183.
Actually, it's 186, episode 186 of House of EdTech.
Just came out this past week, and I'll get it right in the tweet and in, my show notes for episode 39 of Fresh Air at 5. And I want to just say, hey, this one was about podcasting and audio in education. And I believe that there is a great place for podcasting and audio in education. And Chris Nessie has impressed on me over the years. And just this past year, he helped me and encouraged me and got me going with Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. My content comes from right now. This is the content you're going to hear on episode 39, some of it, and the rest of my week's worth of walking and learning is going to be there. Chris, you gave some podcast recommendations for middle school and high school and, elementary students to listen to, and those are fantastic. So I'm going to take a listen to those, and I have a Library Learning Commons meeting with our elementaries today, so I will pass along some ideas that you shared here with them today. So appreciate that so very much, Chris. This is great. Between what I just heard from you, as well as Eric and Nick on Got Tech, the podcast, I hear a bunch of podcasting recommendations and ways of using audio in your classroom. So go check out what Eric and Nick had to say on episode 95 of their podcast, as they had some recommendations for places to get audio and video for students in your classroom. And Chris, you are doing great. Appreciate it so very much. The Floop, I just subscribed to that myself, and I'm going to have to take a look seriously into how I can use Floop for feedback in my space. That's it for today, people. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Peace out. Bye. Hey, PLN. It's Thursday, September 30th, 2021. Today in Canada is Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is a national day of remembrance that was put in place to reconcile our relationship, that being the government and the issues in the past with the Indigenous peoples in Canada, and learning about the past and about history and about how things have gone here in Canada is a big part of that. And setting aside a day for remembrance is one way of getting at that. This is one of the calls to action that was set out, I think, in a few years ago by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And this is an opportunity for us to pause in our busy time in the fall, and right around Orange Shirt Day, which has been a significant event for a few years, bringing awareness to Indigenous issues and education and the integration of the Indigenous people as opposed to the segregation of them. So today is a day off from school. It is not a break, it's not a holiday, it's not a statutory holiday at this point, but it is very important that we pause and think about this. All week long in my classes, we talked about it Tuesday and Wednesday, and we had an assembly yesterday with all of our students across the district through video, a live video, and it was a very good discussion. So that is what is going on today in my space. It's also raining, pouring out here right now, and so that's all right. I got up and got up for my walk because it's very, very important. So I listened to Aspire Leadership podcast with Josh Stamper, and Josh had guest on Jake Miller. And Jake, fantastic to hear you again. Jake Miller Tech is everywhere, and he was here today. And so thanks, Jake, for sharing more about your book. And the one takeaway that I got from this today is that I need to be aware as a tech coach or an integration coach of the work that the teachers are doing so that I understand what I can bring, and they have to have an understanding of computers so they can do it. Thanks. One more thing for September 30th, 2021. You know, the song comes to mind, Here Comes the Rain Again, falling on my head like a melody, falling on my dreams like a new emotion or something like that. Anyhow, it's soaking out here. I'm out walking and I'm getting soaked. So that was in my head while I was listening to the Innovator's Mindset 3 questions that George poses to educators. And he had on guest today Allison Apsey out of Michigan. And Allison, it was fantastic to hear you talk about the path to serendipity and how we have to take advantage of those moments of serendipitousness. And there's things that happen around us all the time, but it's about stopping and pausing and going, okay, what does that mean? And it makes a difference. And I had a moment with George back in 2010, and you can hear me talk a little bit about this actually later when George releases the full podcast. I was a guest with him this past summer as well. And I talked about how I happened to be at this conference, and George was there with his brother Alec, and he was talking about Twitter and how Twitter and social media is powerful, and that was the goal, was to talk about that. During that, I started my Twitter account, and I was like sitting right there. That was in April of 2011, and I started it, and I didn't understand it, and I understand it much better now because I've put some time and energy into it, and it's fantastic to connect with people like George. George is, an innovative mindset guy, and that's his book, and so it's fantastic crossing paths and paying attention. So serendipity is, like, to me, about paying attention to things that happen and optimizing and moving forward with those things. Being a scientist, that's how science happens, it happens like that. All right. Thanks so much, all. We'll talk to you later. I got more podcasting to do because I got papers to deliver today, but I'm not excited about it because it's raining. That's all right. We'll get it. All right. Thanks, all. Have a great day. And Allison, I look forward to your book about teaching the whole teacher or something. Okay, bye. Good morning, PLN. It is Friday, October 1st, 2021. What a beautiful day, and welcome to October. We're in the fall of 2021, and it's a great day. The second month for school for us here in British Columbia, and most of us in Canada. And so, we're stepping into students that have routines, and I'm excited to see the learning growing. Yesterday, I had the privilege of producing our school newsletter, and teachers got me their content and pictures, and it's a great way for me to enjoy our school because I don't get to see everything in all the classrooms all the time, but I do at the end of the month when we build our school newsletter. My Media 11 and 12 students are going to be helping me in the future because this is a learning task that they can engage in, a production task, and it's something that they've helped me with in the past, but I have some new students, so we'll be schooling them up on how to build a newsletter. All right, that's the creative and communicative part. Critical thinking is in there too, and I guess also collaboration. All four of those things happen in our newsletter because how we collaborate and work together to make it happen in a short period of time. I think I spent about 8 hours working on our newsletter this month, and so next month it'll be a lot shorter with some help. All right, this morning I listened to, I think it's episode 43 of the Tom Schimmer podcast. And Tom, thanks so much for your articles and your thoughts about getting a second opinion and how, we feel vulnerable when we get a second opinion in education, from another teacher about how a student's doing. And we're like, whoa, you're questioning my judgment. Yes, you talked to Cathy, Vatterott, Vatterott, I think her name's Cathy, but I could be wrong on that too, and how she's the real homework lady, talking about homework and stress and making a difference for kids and understanding whether our tasks are meaningful or not meaningful. That's a lot to listen to. Take a listen to this, people. Tom's podcast this week is fantastic, and you just take a listen. Happy Friday. Bye-bye. One more thing for Friday, October 1st, 2021. I listened to episode 39 of season 2 of the Innovators Mindset podcast. As George had on 2 guests. He had on Grayson, McKinney, and Zach Rondot, who are a pair of teachers that work together actually in the same classroom space and have worked together with their grade 4s to bring learning and joy to their space in a collaborative way, which is pretty nifty and cool to see. They are the authors of a book called not the After Effect, I can't remember. I will put it in the show note or in the show notes. It'll be not in the show notes, but it's in the show notes for this podcast by George. So go take a look at that. But collectively, they talk about how to engage experts in the classroom and how to bring people into the classroom so students can learn from them, and then also how to have students share their expertise. That's so very important, that students have the ability to share what they're learning. You know, we have that purposeful and meaningful work is one of those things that Daniel Pink talks about as something that gives us purpose and drive. So it's important that we give students the place where they can share their expertise. And do we do that enough? Do we provide an opportunity for them to do that with people around them and in our community? All right, that's it for this week. And thanks, George and Grayson and Zach, for your thoughts. Appreciate it very much. That's the end of episode 39 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. If you haven't taken a listen, do so. I'd encourage you. I thank you for that. I'm 39 episodes into this of doing exactly this, reflecting on my learning as I get out in the morning and get some fresh air at 5. Have a great day. Are you going to get outside and get some fresh air this weekend? I sure am. I'm going to do that. So enjoy your weekend. Talk to you. Bye-bye.
As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.